Hello everyone, welcome to our program called 老贺闲云, for the interpretation of some good engraved seals. And people interested in people engraving might ask me the question, how to appreciate the seal engraving work? That's a common question indeed. Well, I'm afraid I'm no expert in it. So, for more on appreciation of seals engraving works, we are joined by Zhang Gongzhe, the director of China Calligraphers Association, a member of the Shilin Seal Engravers Society, and the researcher of Seal Engraving Institute of China Art Research Institute. Hello, Mr. Zhang. Hello. Some seal engraving enthusiasts ask me about how to appreciate a seal engraving work or how to evaluate. Could you please give me some points and explain it to our audience? Well, an in-depth explanation may cut a lot of time, which is a very complicated question. So I will outline some key points for you just for your references, and they are my own points. There are two important things when we appreciate anything, artworks and an object or even human beings. One is its style and nature inside, and the other is about the materials and techniques used on it. And let's put the style aside and talk about the latter one first. The physical, or what we call the tangible quality for seals engraving works, can be also understood as its techniques. So it's the same as what we see from calligraphy works. There are three parts. The first one is 刀法 or a seals engraving technique. And the second one is called 节字 or 用篆, which refers to the character's arrangement or expression. And the last one is called 构图 or 章法, which means the composition or design of the seal. And then the techniques are the same as calligraphy works and also consist of three parts. But here one thing different from calligraphy, that is 刀法, which in seal engraving means the knife carving technique. And there are many kinds of knife techniques in ancient times, like 18 sets or 36 sets. And we will talking about details of knives usage later. And actually, those techniques are all evolved from two typical techniques, the swift knife technique and chopping cut technique. That's all about seals engraving techniques that we will talking about later. And the second one is 用篆, or which plays a vital part in seals engraving. And seals engraving is not always done with characters in seal script. So 用篆 actually means the character arrangement technique, which is the core of seals engraving art. And knife technique is the difference between the seals engraving and calligraphy, but it is not the core of seals engraving. And it is the character arrangement technique that we consider the core for seals engraving, or we might call it 用篆. Since the engraving genius Deng Shiru back to the Qing dynasty, the saying has gone that seals have to come from calligraphy, which means that characters are the most important in seals engraving. For example, if you want to cut a seal with characters in seal script, and your handwriting of seal style will determine the layout of your final works. This may even prove a decisive factor, and that is about the character arrangement technique. And then the third part is composition, and which means the layout of characters on such a small scale when you want to carve 2 characters, 3 characters, 4 characters, or even more. And that's what we call 章法. And the next step, let's talking about how to appreciate seal for 3 aspects. And a good seal engraving work should excel in these 3 aspects. Let's begin from the last one of the 3. First, the composition, or 章法. And the ultimate aesthetic goal of composition, both in seal engraving and calligraphy works, is to achieve a state of harmony. And no matter how you compose the characters of different numbers on the stone, the final layout must be harmonious and free from any sense of eccentricity. The 4 characters can each take up 1/4 of the stone surface or be in other proportions, like one for a half space and the other 3 for the rest. As long as the layout looks harmonious, you can compose it however you like. If you are a professional engraver, it will be easier to appreciate this kind of harmony. But if you are not an expert or not engrossed in this field for a long time, you can appreciate the works just based on your own understanding and your knowledge and your own experience toward the arts. Just feel for yourself. If you don't feel awkward or bad, it means the composition of the seals reached the standard of harmony. It's okay. And it turns out that composition is required to be harmonious and stable in the arts of seals engraving. Then we're going to talking about the second aspect, the 用篆 or the character arrangement technique, which equals to calligraphy. And the using of the character technique is the decisive factor of seals engraving. And if you are skilled in writing characters in seal script, you can directly draft with your handwriting, arrange the characters on a stone surface, and then carve it out. And that's become your own style. And it is your own calligraphy accomplishment that determines the skill level or proficiency of your character arrangement technique. Therefore, people will say that the achievement of a seal engraver is usually determined by his performance or expertise in Chinese calligraphy, especially when you cut the seal with characters in seal scripts. And the requirements of the character technique can be fully measured by that of the Chinese calligraphy. And in the requirements of calligraphy, the composition, needless to say, is the same as how we appreciate seals engraving. While character arrangement technique is mainly about structure, but in a structure it means you might cut with knife and put the characters together in a proper way. And the core of structuring a character lies in its balance. That is to say that when we write in Chinese characters, we must ensure the balance of the layout of these characters. Some great seal engravers or calligraphers may just modify or separate the structure of the characters, making it different from what ordinary people can appreciate. As long as the final layout or design looks steady and in balanced state, it is pretty fine. For example, Niaoqiao, the Chinese national stadium is located in Beijing. And no matter how undulating its shapes, the whole architecture structure boasts a balanced structure and stand there as solid as a rock. And also the buildings of the CCTV headquarters, which design looks dangerous, but still stand well steady. So are these many torch-like buildings at the side of the four lanes around Beijing. They look just a bit dangerous or unsafe, but they are actually good buildings. And no matter how novel or unorthodox the structure of the building looks, so long as your design is finely shaped and balanced, it undoubtedly displays your artistic talents. So is the rule that you can apply to the arrangement of your Chinese characters. So the second part of character arrangement technique is mainly to keep the structure of the characters balanced. And next, and the first one is about Daofan or the engraving technique. And it is the knife technique that makes seal engraving different from calligraphy. And in ancient times, seals were mostly cast, and some were chiseled or engraved, and they were all made of metals like bronze. And there was no seal engraving techniques at that time. Since Yuan dynasty, the community of educated officials or scholars could carve their own stones with knives. And at that time, people used knives to cut stones. Thus, the seal engraving technique took place. The history of seal engraving technique can be dated back to the Ming Dynasty, and after the formation of the seal engraving school, it was called Daofa, and which has 500 years history. Therefore, as a beginner, there is no need to spend too much time and energy on the way of engraving. The only thing you need to do is to excel in writing good characters in seal script and making a good composition of those characters and then carving them out. Let's just put the knife technique as the back burner. When you have a mastery of character technique and composition, and you can begin to thinking about making improvement on seals engraving technique. And we're talking about later. There are only two ways of seals engraving technique called chongdao and qiedao, and so I think you don't have to pay too much attention on knife technique now. However, when appreciating a seal engraving work, we should know that a good seal does not just consist of harmonious composition, a balanced structure, and stylish characters. And seal's engraving technique is also important. An excellent seal engraver must have his or her own seal's engraving technique or necks, and they must be unique in this regard, and must be like that, or he or she can be an excellent one. If your seal's engraving technique was not terrific, and even if you had your own writing style and a proper composition of characters, the characters on your seal would be just like artistic calligraphy. Therefore, carving seals and artworks is different from carving a seal for daily use, and knife technique plays an important role here. As one not living on seals engraving, it may be difficult for him or her to appreciate seals from the technical aspect. However, as Chinese people, we have a gene for aesthetics, which is also an important part of Chinese culture, and namely 金石篆, or the sense of epigraphy.